how do you vet trust in the hosts or the spaces, the people that own the spaces that are being rented out? How do you do that? I mean, that's exactly what you need to do in my mind. I mean, how do you vet that the person is trustworthy and that's going to be a good experience for the end user?
We do a few things, and it's impossible to do anything perfectly. So I think the more you can layer on kind of a multifaceted approach, that's ultimately the best way because no individual way will be perfect. Um, but the first thing we do is we provide backstops. If you think of this concept of sharing items with your neighbor, even aside from neighbors, say you owned a boat and it was an expensive boat. Most neighbors, I think, would like to be able to share their boat with their neighbors, but it just doesn't happen that often. You don't just like let someone take your boat out on the lake without you there, uh, and that's because if they're to damage it, then there's no kind of backstop in place. Now you feel bad because you have to go to your neighbor and say you need to replace the prop. You broke the prop. And and so you'd rather just not do that. So you just say, you know what? I'm not going to loan my boat out. I'm going to always be there. I'll let people come on my boat, but I'm going to always be there. Now, if a marketplace were to come in and provide insurance, take a portion of the fee for renting it and use that to provide insurance, then you'd probably feel very comfortable letting your neighbor use it. You like your neighbor, you want your neighbor to be able to take your boat. If there's insurance that'll kick in and replace that prop, all of a sudden you feel better. So that's the first approach we take is we provide insurance across the platform. We provide property protection plans. We're actually the only most storage facilities you go to, your property is actually not insured or protected. If the whole facility burns down, you're on the hook for everything that you stored at that facility. So Neighbor is one of the few platforms in the country where you can actually get up to $50,000 in property protection for the items that you store. On the flip side, we provide $1 million host liability guarantee to our hosts because they're effectively running a business out of their home, and so they want to be protected in terms of liability. So we provide that to them. We provide payout protection. So uh, that's another thing people don't think about is well, what if someone moves some items in and then they stop paying? What do you do? You actually can't throw those items away because of self-storage auction law. You have to run a formal auction process. And so what do you do if you're just making no money and someone else's items are in your space? Well, if you're on Neighbor, we'll continue to pay you even though the renter is not paying us. And so we provide you payout protection. So you'll always get paid while items are in your space. And then in addition, we run that whole auction process for you and we get the items out of the space. Now, it's not like that occurs very often. One of the things that's beautiful about this platform that I think is an advantage over a marketplace like Uber or Airbnb is individuals, they have no connection to each other on Airbnb and Uber. When you get out of an Uber, you're probably never going to talk to that Uber driver ever again. Same with an Airbnb. If you stay in an Airbnb and wherever you're traveling, you're probably never going to speak with that Airbnb host again. But on Neighbor, people like to store their items close to them. And so we're called Neighbor because our users are usually storing with someone in their neighborhood or someone in the next neighborhood over. It's very close. So there's a level of social capital that exists on our platform that just doesn't exist on any other marketplace where people are actually quite good to each other. We do ID verification, we do all of these things, but in many ways they're almost unnecessary. They really are just backstops for the very, very rare instances because it turns out people treat their neighbors quite well because you're going to have to live next to your neighbors for 10, 20 years.